I did have one other note on this on representation, and this was the one thing that I had previously had as a critique, but I have changed my mind and I no longer have this as a critique. But it is an interesting conversation that there's a slight bit of controversy about Arcane with this, is mild. So another cliche, one that annoys me heavily, has to do with sapphic romances. Or people will say lesbian romances. I say sapphic to include bisexual women, just, romance between two women. So it's very common. You see this especially in like longer shows. And you see this in films too, but there's usually a reluctance to, shall we say, consummate the romance in a way that you don't see when there's a man and woman. Like, it's like so quick. It's like, oh, and they like each other and they're together. It's like, cool, great. But then you will have two women that'll just be, it'll be episodes and episodes. It'll be seasons and seasons of just pining for each other. And it's like the chemistry is so strong. And then finally at the very last episode of the last season, they kiss briefly. And you're like, okay, why?
It's too quick or it's too slow.
Yes. To be fair, that is slightly realistic though, because to be honest, us sapphics are kind of pathetic sometimes, and we're not always good at making the first move. But that's not usually what happens. It's usually, so
you're saying the long road is more likely than
it depends on the individual. But I'm making
true.
I'm making a joke about a stereotype that we would say within the community that there's no such thing. But I just lost my train of thought for a second. Hold on. So usually why this has happened, it's been because of higher ups just not being comfortable, committing. So the phrase queerbaiting, which is a very annoying thing that happens, or basically it's like, we want all the audiences to be happy. We want to bring in the LGBT people that are going to be like, oh, cool, there's going to be a romance, between two guys or between two women, but then we're never going to actually confirm that they're actually together because we want to make sure the homophobes stay too, right? And so we'll just drag it on until right at the end. Okay, now we'll let them kiss, and that's all we'll let them do. And that's traditionally been kind of the reason. It's because of like studio executives that are like not wanting to do that because it is a little bit risky.
I think it's only risky to do it the wrong way, like what we're talking about. I think
it's not risky anymore. I don't think it is anymore. I think this culture shifted enough now where people don't care. But for a while it was. It's like, well, if you let that happen, then certain kind of people are going to be annoyed. But because of that, there's a lot of content out there with this queerbaiting thing where it makes it look like there's going to be, a same-sex couple, but then we don't actually like really commit to it, or we're really, really reluctant to do that. And so there was some critique and I felt this way too, kind of intuitively. It's one of those things that you're kind of like more sensitive to if you've experienced it a bunch of times. I kind of felt that way when the first time I watched this, because, I saw, okay, well, we have Mel and Jace very quickly, they're already in bed, right? And then with Vi and Caitlyn, you're spending a lot more time kind of connecting with their emotional, the sort of emotional connection that they have. But all you get is like a very tender touch at one point, and there was a little bit of like why didn't we get more? I have changed my mind on that though, because when you look at it from a pure storytelling perspective, it makes sense. Like they've only known each other literally for 2 days, whereas Jace and Mel have known each other for like 6 years by that point. Maybe they weren't like romantic at all, but there's a lot of history. And these two also, like that moment when they're on the bed, when a lot of people are like, hey, did something happen here? Or shouldn't we have seen something happen? It wouldn't have been appropriate, because like at that moment,
she had her parents home at that point.
Yeah, well, specifically, they were having a moment of connection, but it was Vi talking about her sister and being sad about this and talking about her trauma, basically. And it wouldn't, if Caitlyn had tried to kiss her, it would have made the moment about her instead. It would have changed the topic. It would have been like, okay, now we're talking about us. Instead, she was being there for her, and that made more sense. And when I heard it explained that way, I was like, you know what? I agree. Like that's so much more authentic.
Well, even in like heterosexual stuff, like there's warm up, there's dry runs, where you're like with me, like in different like you're with a girl and there's these intimate moments, but nothing's going to happen. It's not the right time. Right. You, from the guy point of view, you look a little rushed if you're like, oh, I'm going to capitalize right now on this great moment we're having. Sometimes you have to be patient, and there is a right moment to do it. So there are these intimate moments that don't get consummated immediately. So I agree with you. I didn't know how I felt about it, to be perfectly honest. When I saw it the first time, I paid more attention to it this time, and I realized that there are appropriate, in my opinion, just my opinion, but like appropriate clues. Like she calls her cupcake because you're so sweet, and I was like, okay, that's a little flirty. Like if I said that to a girl, maybe, or that's flirty. And then there's the scene in the brothel where Vi is walking by and she sees Caitlyn talking to, I think, a female prostitute. Yeah. And she seems to be enamored with her, but they don't overplay it, in my opinion. I thought it was done very well, where Vi just kind of notices. She's like,
I'll take note of that. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. That's all that needed to be done right there. That was a perfect thing. And then also I thought about it too, like Jace and Mel, they're in a very comfortable setting. They're in his room. She's painting. Like, there's nothing interrupting them. They're not in a survival situation. So for them, I think it's an easier path to the finish line in that context. Yes. Whereas Kate and Vi are in like survival situations. They're wounded at times. They're fighting for their lives. Like, that's not the most romantic setting. That's not what's on your mind first and foremost. So I agree with you. I thought upon this viewing that they paced it out rather well, given the circumstances that they were in, and I think we'll see them again in season 2.
Yes, that's how I've come to feel. That I think that they were, in this case, it was not, in other situations when things like this happen, it was kind of more motivated by, arguably, by homophobia. Not here. This is the opposite. This is they're being very authentic to the characters. They're letting things progress in the way that they naturally should. And they're taking their time to make us care about them and root for them and to make the slow burn that's building feel authentic. Yeah,
I think you're right, because really romance in any character dynamic was very much in the back burner for all these characters. Even the Jace and Mel thing, it like happened in one episode and then they're kind of like back to power politics. It wasn't something that would, prolong.
Those two aren't really in love. They're allies that have a thing going on.
Yeah, whereas we're allies. We might as well sleep together too. So.
Right. What we're setting up for Vi and Caitlyn is something I think a lot deeper. It's like a real romance. And so
for sure. Yeah. In fact, I would say that's the core romantic relationship in this whole show. Yeah. And I think it works perfectly. I like both of those characters. Like I said, Vi is one of the characters I relate to. I like her. And I also like Kate. I feel like Kate gives us some of that femininity that the show doesn't have a lot of, which isn't even a flaw. Like, it's appropriate. The women are tough in this and, tough as nails, and they fight each other and they don't care. They're women of action. Kate seems to be a little bit more of like your classic princess. I know she's not a princess. I know this came up, but I think she delivers some of that femininity that is also very appealing in a character. So, and she does a good job with it. She's an enforcer. She's from Piltover. She's like a fish out of water down in the Undercity. She's willing to kind of like bleed down there a little bit to see what's going on. She gets on the side adventure with Vi, which becomes a main adventure with Vi. So, and then she has to go back home and like deal with her parents who are power players in Piltover. So I think Kate's actually a great character. She seemed rather general in the early part, but she really grew on me in the middle to late episodes for sure.